Happy Dwight Clark Day to you guys all, as today was actually the final open training camp practice of the off season. But of course, as we know, anything San Francisco 49ers, and in fact, anything NFL related, has been completely overshadowed by the ongoing Brandon Aiyuk trade saga and what is going to happen. Now, plenty of more pulling the trigger a little too quickly reports have absolutely came out. We've also had more insiders providing more information on the Brandon Ayuk situation. But as you can see, it's Wednesday, August 7th. It's 4:27 p.m. on the West Coast. And we do not have any trade that has been finalized with Brandon Ayuk, the Steelers, or with anyone else. So we'll talk about all the things revolving this situation. But of course, we just had training camp practice. So we can talk about all of training camp in a whole. As a whole, we could talk about biggest risers. We could talk about camp standouts, all those different types of things. So we'll get into all things San Francisco 49ers right now. But you guys already know what to do. Drop your SDS in the chat. And if you don't know, SDS sounds for Sourdough Squad. All you got to do, sub to the channel, and you are a member of the SDS. We love to see it. Love to see all the SDSs in the chat. And as you know, smash that like button. And we're going to talk about it all right now. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is good, bread gang? We got the gluten gang in the building. Look at all the SDSs hopping in here. It has been a wild 72 hours, 2 weeks, 4 months. I don't know. I can't even keep track anymore. This Brandon Aiyuk saga has been one of the wildest situations we've seen regarding the San Francisco 49ers, which is saying a lot, right? That's saying a lot. We had a Nick Bosa holdout all the way nearly into the season. I thought one of the most profound things while being at 49ers headquarters yesterday, talking to Nick Bosa, when he was asked about did he ever think that he could be potentially traded, and he kind of alluded to the fact that that might have happened. Like there was potentially a chance that he could have been traded. Now, it obviously didn't happen, but Nick Bosa made it crystal clear that that is something that crossed his mind. So here we are. We find ourselves in the same scenario now with Brandon Aiyuk. It's obviously become more clear. It's obviously been more clear that this situation with Brandon Aiyuk has taken a turn. I think if we want to kind of talk about the situation with Brandon Aiyuk first, before we really get into anything else, yes, for all the newcomers, SDS is the Sourdough Squad. We welcome you to our bread gang. So, the situation with Brandon Aiyuk. What did we get this morning? Let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk has been traded to the Steelers over the last 4 months, probably 17 times. So he got traded again to the Steelers this morning. by a guy who I think is responsible for trading Brandon Aiyuk to the Steelers at least 3 or 4 times this offseason. But let's talk about the report that another breaking news report came out again. Cam Marino is the one who kind of set this thing off by jumping the gun and saying, breaking news, Brandon Aiyuk has been traded to the Steelers. Ever since that has happened, it's just been constant whirlwind of what actually is happening. And since then, did he delete the tweet? Hold on. Did he didn't delete it, did he? He didn't. No, he didn't. So Andrew Filipponi today tweeted out this morning. Sources: the Steelers have a verbal agreement in place with the 49ers for Brandon Aiyuk. All the terms of the deal and contract details are being hammered out now. The wide receiver is coming to Pittsburgh. So that was put out today at 9:15 a.m. West Coast time. And so it's been an ongoing situation. Now, all that being said, what we have heard from your Schefters, I find this situation, I'm all over the place right now, but I find this situation to be very interesting because it has almost given more credibility back to the national insiders because there's been so much misinformation that has been leaked that it's almost discredited anyone who's coming out and saying anything and providing sourced information because now it's like, well, it could be true, it could not be true. So we actually just have to wait now until a Schefter or a Rappaport. So I think in a roundabout way, I think this whole situation has actually given the credibility back to the national insiders because there's been so much smoke surrounding this situation. But in regards to what we're hearing from a national media perspective, we are hearing that Brandon Aiyuk does want to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're hearing the Pittsburgh Steelers do want Brandon Aiyuk, and we are hearing that uh, the 49ers are very likely going to trade Brandon Aiyuk. So I asked the stream yesterday. I said, "What is the likelihood of Brandon Aiyuk getting traded, or is he staying?" And honestly, the chat was split down the middle. I would say it was probably about 50-50. People said Brandon Aiyuk was staying with the Niners. The other half said he was being traded to the Steelers. So I kind of want to reset that. It's been probably about 24 hours. And, from the insider's perspective, we have heard that BA probably is going to get traded. So I want to ask you again, what is going to happen with Brandon Aiyuk? I want to hear you drop it in the chat. What is going to happen? Um, is he going to get traded? Is he going to stay? I want to see if the chat has kind of shifted its thought process just in the last 24 hours because I think through all the noise of what we have heard, it does feel like everything is pointing towards Brandon Ayuk being gone. So I know there was a little bit of optimism. It clearly felt like he turned down both the Browns and the Patriots. The only team he'd want to go to is the Steelers, but the Steelers and the 49ers have not been able to iron out trade terms. What we have heard is the contract is accepted to from Brandon Ayuk. So it's essentially a swap of the other scenarios where the 49ers had agreed to the trade compensation with the Pats and the Browns. However, it was Brandon Aiyuk who had to accept the trade, and he declined both of those. Well, now Brandon Aiyuk has accepted the contract from what's been reported from the Steelers. It's now just between the Steelers and the 49ers to iron out what the return is. And we had Ian Rappaport on NFL Network. I think they call it Training Camp Live, I believe is the show. I want to make sure I give them proper credit. Um, Ian Rappaport said that there's a strong likelihood that Brandon Ayuk gets traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the 49ers would recoup draft picks. Oh, I don't love the sound of that. Personally, if you had to ask me, draft picks for Brandon Ayuk hurts my soul a little bit. So I would imagine that the 49ers are not trying to trade Brandon Ayuk for draft picks because that doesn't help you this year. That is a that is a situation where you are taking away an all-pro player and adding nothing in return. So it's simply just a subtraction. You're subtracting a your number one wide receiver. You're subtracting an all-pro from this offense. With they're not going to help you. Nothing. A 2025 first round pick might sound nice, but that 2025 draft pick ain't helping anything. And as we've seen, the draft is a crapshoot. So you don't even know if that pick is going to turn into anything. So that's why I personally don't love the idea of trading an all pro player for future picks. Not my idea of a good time, but I asked the chat if you guys think he's staying or if he's going. Because, like I said, just 24 hours ago, I asked the same question to you guys and it was split down the middle. So I just want to see where we're at. Al says he's leaving. He's getting traded. He's getting gone. He's gone. 90% likelihood he is traded. We got our first staying traded. He's gone. SoCal Niner fan is probably like 99% of us who are over it, and we just kind of want to see it finalized. I think we've all kind of wrapped our heads around the notion. I think now we're just at the point where it's like rip the band-aid off and let's get this over with. But at the same time, you don't want to rip the band-aid off and get just draft picks in return. That sounds terrible. So I think if this is being held up over compensation, then good, because you can't trade Brandon Ayuk for a bag of chips. It just can't happen. So you need something in return. Something has to come back. A player that can contribute towards a Super Bowl this season. It has to be done. Because if you trade an all-pro wide receiver for future picks in the beginning of August, ouch. Ouch. So, based on the chat, it seems like the chat has kind of switched its tune in the last 24 hours. It's happening. Question is, what will we get? Oh, we got another. This is our second one. He's going to stay. He just wants to get paid. See, that's the thing. If he wanted to get paid, he would have went to the Patriots. The contract details have finally emerged, so I can talk about it. The Patriots offered Brandon Aiyuk north of $32 million per year on average, guys. Do we know this? Did you guys see this? It's finally been reported. This was something that I knew for a while, but Brandon Aiyuk was offered 32 to 32 and a half APY. So average per year. Right now, the last we heard that the 49ers offered was 26, in the range of 26. I believe it's 27 that he was offered. And so Brandon Ayuk would have gotten 32 and a half. And guys, the guarantees were insane. The guaranteed money would have made your jaw hit the floor. I don't think that's been reported yet, so I'm not going to say anything until it comes out. But I guarantee you the guaranteed money would make your jaw hit the floor. And Brandon Ayuk said no. So is it about just getting paid? I don't believe it is. I think Brandon Ayuk understands that he also wants to win. So that's what just makes this situation like real muddy. It's like real muddy. It's real muddy because honestly, in some conversations, that I've had, I was like, man, I was like, someone get BA on the phone and tell him to take that immediately. I was like 30, 32 plus. I was like, take it, man. Like that's a phenomenal deal. You're not getting that from the Niners. You're not getting that from the Pittsburgh Steelers. If that's really what you're looking for, if you're really looking to be paid, I mean, 32 and a half, I think would have him as the second or third highest paid wide receiver. It would have put him in the top 5 category of highest paid wide receivers. And he said no. I'm assuming he said no. Let me make that abundantly clear because we saw the Patriots dropped out. They're like, oh, we're going to focus on our young wide receivers, according to Adam Schefter, except for the fact that the Patriots have reportedly been trying to trade for Brandon Aiyuk since March. So I think that tells you exactly what went down. So I don't think he just wants to get paid. I don't. That tells me he just doesn't want to get paid because he could have went to the worst the worst team. I would say the Washington Commanders are going to be significantly better. I think the Chicago Bears are going to be the Pats are the worst team in the NFL. He could have went to the worst team in the NFL and been top 3 highest paid wide receivers, and it sounds like he didn't want that. So that tells me that maybe it's not just about getting paid. So that's, I think, what makes this situation a little bit tricky is it seems like a one-team race. And for the 49ers, they can't really drum up any leverage, right? Like there's no bidding war. If Brandon Ayuk doesn't want to go to the Pats or the Browns, then it's a hollow process. They're not actually bidding against each other. The Steelers would know that if BA is like, dog, I'm not going to Cleveland. I'm not going to the Pats. Like, yeah, the 49ers accepted those deals, but I'm not signing there. So like we talked about this yesterday. It feels like it's the Spider-Man meme. They're pointing at each other. It's the Steeler. It's Mike Tomlin, Kyle Shanahan, who know each other very well, just pointing at each other. Like, you make a better offer, and they're like, you take a lesser offer. And it's just like, it's funny. I like to try to make sense of things the best way I can. You guys know, if you're new to the channel, I'm a big time dynasty football player. So Dynasty is year-round leagues. They don't ever end. You have a startup draft. You draft your whole team. There's 30 rounds. Typically, you get your whole roster. You have rookie drafts. You trade all year. It's ongoing. You keep your teams and you build your teams. So you get to operate like a fake general manager. So when you come across a good dynasty general manager, they aren't going to get fleeced because they're smart enough and have the wherewithal to be able to understand value, and they're not desperate. And it makes it really challenging when you have two of those trying to make a deal. When two really quality dynasty managers who have quality teams who are trying to make a trade, it becomes very challenging because the only way a deal gets done is if it's flat even. That's the only way it gets done. If it's flat even, there's not a real winner, there's not a real loser. You just look at the deal and you're like, yeah, it makes sense for both sides. That's, I feel like, where we're stuck with this deal is that you have Kyle Shanahan, Mike Tomlin, very savvy head coach, roster builders, and they're like, I'm not getting fleeced by you. One side, like Kyle's like, well, we got an all pro. Uh he's he's worth he's worth X amount. And then but the Steelers are like, well, we got to pay him. So we're not paying X amount. And it kind of feels like a standoff between the value of the trade, and that's why it hasn't gotten done. So um I really think that's where we're at. Oh, fun times, man. Super fun. So who's gonna budge? It feels like it's the Niners, if we're being perfectly honest. It feels like the 49ers are going to be the first to budge. Because they're the one who's trying to offload. They're the ones who are trying to offload Brandon Aiyuk, not vice versa. So it's interesting. Let me take a look at some of these super chats. I'm old Greg. I'm old Greg. For whatever reason, like this is one of the most quotable videos I think of all time. Um, I don't know if you guys are familiar with old Greg. Uh, it's got me thinking of some of the hilarious quotes to come from that. I'm sorry, Squirrel. He says, "Can you tell Grant Cohn to shut his with still talking smack about BCB? Dude is a." I will say this: Grant can say whatever he wants. I do not care about what Grant has to say. Do I agree with Grant? You can tell by my content if I agree or disagree with Grant. Grant can say whatever he wants. That's why he has his platform. He can do what he wants. That's his thing. That's it. Like if you don't like it, I think that's on you. You can make the decision whether to watch the content or not. Other than that, you know, he he's entitled to say whatever he wants. Doesn't mean I got to agree with it, but I'm not going to tell Grant anything. um, Brian says, who would you want other than Fautanu? So, yes, I love Troy Fautanu. Who would I want other than that? Herbig. Herbig would be nice. Let's look at their roster. Let's go shopping. Let's go shopping for our newest contributor because we don't want just draft picks. Because just draft picks is a massive L in my opinion, and that's definitely not what we want. So let's go shopping, shall we? Let's go shopping at the Pittsburgh Steelers Supermart. So who would you want other than Faltanu? So look at our guy, Jack Coletto, former 49ers legend. Looks like he's starting fullback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right. So obviously, we don't need a quarterback. Running back, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. Could you see? Could you see the? Could you see the Steelers willing to trade Najee Harris? I think they would. I don't think we need a running back. Oh, actually, that's a lie, to be honest with you guys. Just to give you a scene of what today's running back situation looked like, it was Matt Breida actually got the first carry of team period. Absolutely wild. Matt Breida got the first carry. Then it was Jordan Mason. Then we saw some Schrader. We saw some Keyshawn Vaughn. I didn't see Patrick Taylor out there. So I think the 49ers potentially are down 3 running backs right now. Christian McCaffrey for a month. Elijah Mitchell didn't practice. I didn't see Patrick Taylor. And the 49ers running back stable consisted today of JP Mason, Matt Breida, Schrader, Keyshawn Vaughn. Those are your 4 49ers running backs right now. Now, I don't necessarily want Najee Harris at all, but I wonder if they would trade him because I don't think they picked up his 5th-year option. Anyways, moving on. So they got George Pickens, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Des Fitzpatrick. You could entice me potentially with Roman Wilson. You could potentially entice me with George Pickens. However, I was joking about George Pickens earlier today, and I said George Pickens is already in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, and Kyle Shanahan hasn't even traded for him yet. If this is going down this way with Brandon Aiyuk, how I don't understand how it would be any different with George Pickens. George Pickens went viral last year for not blocking on a would-be touchdown by his running back, and he was just like, "Yeah, I don't want to get hurt. Yeah, I don't want to." It's like, I'm not. I catch footballs. I don't block. Yeah, you're like I said. He would be in the doghouse, but like he would already be in the doghouse before they accepted the trade because George Pickens would have to show up and change his entire mentality, and I don't think he's going to do that. So I don't think it's a fit. Now George Pickens is a phenomenal talent. I would love the talent of George Pickens. I don't think the person would be someone who would fit in this locker room. So that would be someone that I would be very hesitant about. I think on paper, if you saw that it was Pickens and a third, Pickens and a pick, I think it would soften the blow of the trade because you're like, okay, well, we got a young, high talent wide receiver and a pick. Okay, we can convince ourselves that that's not a bad trade. We can convince ourselves that no, okay, we got a comparable player in return, right? But I don't know how well that would. I don't know how well he would fit. I don't think he would fit. I think he would become just as much of a problem as they're having with Brandon Ayuk right now. So it's like, okay, we're gonna trade Brandon Ayuk for a younger Brandon Ayuk, and we're gonna have to retrain this guy like we had to train Brandon Ayuk. Let's do it again. Like, I, yeah, I don't think that's I don't think that's the necessarily best idea, but I think on paper it would feel better. Um, Tight end wise, you have Connor Hayward, who I really enjoyed at the combine, but he's like a H back. He's undersized. He's about 6'1". I don't think the 49ers would want him. Darnell Washington would be very interesting. Darnell Washington or Pat Fryermuth would be interesting options. Obviously, if you get Darnell Washington, you're getting a 6'7", 264-pound monstrosity. This guy is just absolutely huge. You can see very limited production as a rookie. He has quite the upside, though. But if you want a proven producer, Pat Fryermuth would be a little bit better option. Now, he's dealt with injuries, from my understanding. So that's part of the drawback with him. But as you can see, in year 2, he had 63 receptions, 98 targets for 732 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, the yards went down last year, or no, that's 2021. So that was his rookie year. So we're in reverse. He got hurt 2023. His sophomore year was his best year yardage wise. His rookie year, he had 7 touchdowns. So he's a good player, in my opinion. I just don't know if they would trade him. And I think if you're trading for someone, I don't think you want a backup. I don't know. I don't know if they would do that. But I would probably prefer Fryermuth over Darnell Washington at this point. But again, like I said, I don't know if they do that. And I think Braden Willis has been playing well for them to feel more comfortable with the tight end too. So then that takes us into their offensive line. And who do we go with any one of these guys? Do they somehow give up Troy Faltanu? I would love it. I would be through the moon. Literally, their 3 draft picks aren't starting. Do they get rid of James Daniels? This has been a popular name that has been thrown around in potential trades. Former second round draft pick, 26 years old. He's a quality offensive lineman. I think he would fit well into our scheme. He could play center as well. I think that's where you would put him if the 49ers went for James Daniels. I think they would put him at center. Yes, I respond to comments all the time, but as you can see, I'm talking about something right now. So as we continue to look at this group, I've heard Dan Moore potentially being offered up. I've heard nothing but not good things about Dan Moore with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't know if I would like to do that. Uh he's young, 25 years old, so there's still room for him to improve, but Dan Moore, I've heard not the best things from Steelers folks on him. So obviously, I would have to jump into the tape to have a true opinion on that. But based on just what I've heard from them, they're like, nah. Broderick Jones, if you needed a tackle, but he's a first round pick. He's a top 15 guy. Bro, look at this guy is 14th 14th overall pick, Broderick Jones. Troy Faltanu, first round pick, top 20. Zach Frazier, second round pick, 51st overall. Man, James Daniel, I think, was drafted by Chicago, though, but he's still a second round draft pick. You want to talk about investing into your offensive line? Dude, Steelers had one of the I had one of my the best drafts in my opinion. Had one of the best drafts because they drafted all offensive linemen. It's a total Brad draft. I would have totally drafted like McCormick was a guy I really liked. Fautanu was a guy I liked. Frazier's really good. Like this is a Brad they had a Brad draft, 100%. So if you could get any one of those guys, that would be cool. Um, Cat Laxdad, I'll get to yours in a second. This one just pertains to what we're talking about. Cali Kid says Cam Hayward, McCormick, and a pick. I wonder how much Cam Hayward costs. So if you got me any one of these rookies, I would be okay with that. If you got me James Daniels, I would be okay with that. Cam Hayward, I like as a player, but he just feels so. He feels like, oh yeah, he's 35 years old. I don't want Cam Hayward. I don't want Cam Hayward. Respect to Cam Hayward. I don't want Cam Hayward. Too old. My ageism is acting up. I mean, honestly, if you could get Alex Highsmith was a draft crush of mine. I really liked him coming out of Charlotte. I remember I used to do these Instagram lives where I would tell people to give me a name and then I would pull up their film and we would do like live film breakdowns off the cuff. And one of the names that someone said was Alex Highsmith, and I instantly fell in love with the guy. Like I was like, this dude is dope. Like total NFL frame, 6'4", 242 pounds. Like you could see, even though he was playing at a small school, he was an NFL guy. Like you could see clear as day. So I have an affinity for Alex Highsmith. So if you could get Alex Highsmith, that wouldn't be bad. I would, but he got paid, so he's expensive. I think he's a part of their long-term plans. If you could get someone like, but see, if you got a Nick Herbig, you would need more than Nick Herbig because if Justin's in here, Justin and I went back and forth on Nick Herbig when he came out. Justin was like, "You got to check this guy out." Our head of sourdough scouts. And so I did the film on him, and he is pure speed. He is, you want to talk about a speed rusher? He is pure speed off the edge. So he is not your prototypical edge size at 6'2", 240. But you talk about a guy having a full bag of pass rushing moves. He already has won the leverage battle. He's strong, so he can hold up at his size, and he's just his first step get off and the moves that he can throw, uh, pretty solid. So if you were able to get her big pick and something else, maybe. Her big's nice though. He is. He's an ascending player, and you can see he's 22 years old, so he's really young. But he's already proven that he can play in the league, and he can only improve, right? So Herbig would be a guy that I would be willing to consider, but I don't think it's enough. So it'd have to be Herbig plus. If you did Herbig, James Daniels, that could be something because you could theoretically look at it as you get your fourth defensive end, which I think the 49ers need 4 solid defensive ends. And then you get James Daniels, who could potentially compete at center. I mean, what we saw in training camp was Nick Sakel was rotating at center with Jake Brendel. So I don't know internally how the 49ers feel about the center position because Feliciano hasn't practiced the last 2 days. It was normally Feliciano rotating with Brendel. Now it's Nick Zakel rotating at center. So I don't know if the 49ers feel super comfortable with I'm trying to get a read on what's going on with that rotation. But if that rotation is an indication of is that if that's an indication that they're potentially looking to have a switch from Brendel, then well, if you can get a center in a trade, I would prefer I don't know, Zach Frazier or James Daniels. I think it would be a coin flip. But I think that would be an interesting element to it. Um, TJ Watt's not going anywhere. Peyton Wilson is interesting, but he's a rookie. Um, Joey Porter Jr. is not going anywhere. I don't think we really need secondary help. I think our secondary looks pretty solid right now. So yeah, I mean, the names, if you wanted to talk trade, you're probably looking. I think the most enticing names are Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, potentially Peyton Wilson, James Daniels, McCormick, Frazier, Fautanu, Pickens, Wilson, Washington, Fryermuth. I think those are your names that I don't even know if all of them would even be in consideration for a trade, but I do think those names you could see a potential path forward in maybe how they fit into the 49ers offense. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think you got to get players, man. You got to get players. You got to get players who can potentially contribute right away. Yeah, like that's why I don't like this Ayuk trade because it doesn't feel proactive. It feels reactive. And I feel like when you're in a position like that, I believe that reactive trades could hurt a little bit. So I just don't want that to be the case. Let me get back to Lackstad. Ayuk's bread is getting stale. Give him 20 million guaranteed this year, then tag and trade next year for a second or a third. I saw this similar option posed, and I think it's actually somewhat of a this is what I like. If we have to accept that Brandon Aiyuk isn't going to be a Niner for the future, I would much rather give Brandon Aiyuk a 1-year deal, maybe get him in the range of 26, 27, 28 million. Now, I wouldn't fully guarantee that, but I would give him the guarantee, get him in that range. If let's say if he's willing to take 28 or 27 from the Steelers, so they know what he's willing to take. Okay. Well, we know what you'll accept because you've accepted it from the Steelers. So let's take that figure. Let's do a 1-year deal. We'll make sure you get I don't know, like 60% of this deal, 65%, 70% of this deal guaranteed, and come back for one more year and I don't know. We'll tag and trade you. We'll promise. I don't know. I don't know if he would do that. I don't know if he would do that. I don't think he would do that. But it would be interesting to see if you could maybe pose it because I would feel much better with one more year of Brandon Aiyuk and then be able to have 1 year of like, all right, this is our last dance, where let's go for the Super Bowl, put the BS behind us. All right, yes, this was a crappy situation. It didn't turn out the way any of us wanted it to, but let's bury the hatchet for one season and then let's go chase a ring. And then after that, whatever happens, happens. We'll facilitate a move, we'll facilitate something, you know, because the Pats, if the Pats were willing to pay over 32 this year, well, the market will continue to rise. If he puts up another all pro season, he could have the ultimate bet on himself type season and potentially make more than 32. So it's a double-edged sword though, because if let's say he gets hurt, let's say he doesn't produce, then you're kind of SOL, unfortunately. So it's probably less likely. It's probably very unlikely that that would happen. But for me, if I had to wrap my brain around the fact that Brandon Ayuk isn't going to be here next year, but you're telling me I can get one more year Brandon Ayuk, I would be willing to do what I can to be able to do that for sure. Chris says James Daniels and a draft pick is what I'm hearing. The Steelers know Ayuk wants to be here, so the 49ers are negotiating from a point of weakness. I would assume that the Steelers are lowballing the 49ers for a reason because they know it's a one-team race for Brandon Ayuk. And so the Steelers, being a smart organization, they're not going to overpay. They're not going to overextend for Brandon Ayuk, just like the 49ers wouldn't. The 49ers wouldn't overpay, you know, not that they haven't before, but I don't think currently they would overpay in a trade just to get someone. Uh, so again, it's a challenging situation because I think both sides are competent. And I think when you have two competent sides trying to make a trade, no one's getting what they want. And that's the hardest pill to swallow, is that the trade has to be fair at minimum. No one's winning this. And I think the problem with the 49ers side right now is they're already kind of taking an L on this situation. So they have to ensure that when they offload Ayuk, the trade has to be something they can sell, right? You don't want to look like you got taken advantage of by the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know how that goes. Like, we know all the time. Like, that's just how it goes. If the 49ers traded Brandon Ayuk, you know what the first headlines, you know what the first videos, you know what the first content that's being spun. Who won the trade? Oh, Steelers won the trade. 49ers lost the trade. It's a perception thing, right? Because you don't want to be the one who loses the trade. It's not a good spot to be in, especially if you're a head coach, general manager. So, and I think that's what's playing into why there's no rush. They aren't rushing this because if they rush it, that's how you end up with just draft picks. And then that's how you end up with the 49ers lost the deal. The Steelers won the deal. So I think that's just where we're at. It comes down to how do you get a return on Ayuk that is not only fair for the Steelers, but also something that the Niners can hang their hat on, feeling like they have something that they could be like, look, we got a good return to sell to their own fan base. So, like, that's why the Pickens in a second, those rumors, you could sell that to the fan base. You could. You really could. I don't think Pickens would fit, but you could absolutely sell Pickens and a second for Brandon Aiyuk because you would be getting a younger wide receiver. Uh, you would be able to you get a guy that has high talent. He's 3 years younger than Ayuk. He had 1,100 receiving yards last year on 63 receptions, 5 touchdowns, and he's an ex wide receiver. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. He's a very talented guy. You could sell the fan base on it. I don't think it's I don't think it's the best thing because I'd much rather have Ayuk. But you could sell them on. You could sell a second and Pickens for sure. Uh, but I would imagine. Um, I would imagine that the Steelers are going to be like, "You're crazy." Now, I heard rumors when I was at the combine. Uh, People who I know very well who were at the combine, credentialed with me, tapped in actually cover the Steelers. They told us that he was like, "Oh, you won't believe what I heard. I heard that the Steelers are shopping George Pickens." Now we know that the Steelers traded Deontay Johnson, but I also heard back at the combine from a guy who is credentialed to cover the Steelers that it's like, oh, I'm hearing that Pickens could be on the move. So that could maybe open up their minds if they've already processed that they've maybe shopped Pickens around a little bit. And so they might be open to it. But yeah, there's not a lot of options. And Chris says Steelers aren't going to budge, guys. They can wait or sign someone else. Only the 49ers have a problem here, so you will accept or decline the trade. And Chris makes a phenomenal point. I think this is the problem. I think this is why I think this is why something hasn't gotten done because the Steelers aren't desperate. The Steelers aren't the Patriots. They're not the Browns. They aren't desperate to get a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. Do they want Brandon Aiyuk? Sure, but they're not going to overpay for Brandon Aiyuk. And to Chris's point, they are just going to sit and wait because we also heard, I don't even know if it was reports or rumors, but I think it's been reported that the Steelers offered a first. No, I think it was Tim Kawakami. I think it was Tim Kawakami of The Athletic who reported that the Steelers offered their first round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Do you know who the Steelers drafted with their first round pick? Troy Fautanu, my draft crush. So the 49ers could have traded Brandon Aiyuk for a first round draft pick, drafted Troy Fautanu, and then still drafted a wide receiver at 31. Now, that would probably mean that you don't have Pooney, but that would have meant they could have went elsewhere in that, in that third round. They could have went with a different player. Um, so if it's true, if it's not true, I saw that I believe it was Tim Kawakami who said that. I hope I'm not misquoting him. But I believe that was a situation that is out there. amongst all the information that is out there about Brandon Aiyuk. So again, it's I don't think in the the how to do business in the NFL handbook, I don't think you want to be trading an all pro player in August, because you end up in a situation like this where you don't have options. And it appears that the 49ers are dead set on getting rid of Brandon Ayuk, but they don't have a bidding war. And because they don't have a bidding war, because they let me rephrase this. They would have a bidding war if Brandon Ayuk wasn't looking for a contract extension. But because Brandon Ayuk has to agree to sign a contract, that is what's really messing up, I think, the 49ers haul. I think it's really messing up their potential to get a quality return on Brandon Ayuk, because Brandon only wants to go to a team that is willing to trade for him, but they're not willing to overspend. And that becomes a challenge. Paul says, you don't think there is a dark horse? There could always be a dark horse, but I don't know who it would be. Would it be the Raiders? Do you think the Raiders could be the dark horse? Because I do think Ayuk would entertain the Raiders. If I'm not mistaken, he was recruited by Pierce at ASU. ASU was on the staff when he was at ASU. So there's a natural relationship. And, from what we've heard, it sounds like one of the reasons why Ayuk wants to go to the Steelers is to play for Tomlin. So it sounds like Ayuk is angling here because he wants to go play for that coach. He wants to go play for Tomlin. Well, I would imagine he would play for Pierce as well. But Pierce has a wide receiver core that consists of Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, who I think is a little bit underrated. I think Jacoby Myers is a little bit underrated. If Jacoby Myers is your third wide receiver, though, I think you're in a good spot. But right now, Jacoby is their second wide receiver. You got Trey Tucker, and then beyond that, you got a bunch of nobodies. Jalen Guyton, former Charger, deep threat, hasn't done much. Keelan Doss, who I actually really liked. I think what did he come out of? He came out of somewhere local. Was it Keelan came out of he was a UC Davis. That's right. And he's from Alameda. But I liked him at the Senior Bowl, but he never really panned out to be anything. So the Raiders really only have 3 wide receivers. In fact, they have 2.5. I don't know if Trey Tucker is necessarily someone that you're worried about. So, but they do have Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. So you could see a lot of 2 tight end sets with that group. But looking at their roster, they definitely could add a wide receiver of Ayuk's stature. So what would they do though? Like, what would that trade look like? Would the 49ers be like, well, we'll give you Ayuk for Devontae? Would they accept that? Devontae Adams is 31 years old. He'll be 32 this year. He still had 103 receptions last year for over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. So we know Devontae is more than capable of producing. And I think he would be okay coming to the 49ers because they do win. and I think that's what he wants. I think he wants to win. I think he wants to compete for a Super Bowl. So, would you do Devontae Adams for Brandon Ayuk straight up if it came down to it? I think under the circumstances of understanding that it's we need to find a place for Brandon Ayuk to go, then I think you would have to say yes. I personally would keep Brandon Ayuk if there was an opportunity to because he's 26. He's an ascending prospect. He fits exactly what the 49ers want from a wide receiver. Um, so Murph says Matt Barrows is on 95.7 just said a couple minutes ago that the Niners still want Ayuk on the team. I love Matt. I think Matt is fantastic. I have heard the exact opposite of that. Um, but that could also be a way to try to drum up leverage a little. So, like what I'm talking about right now, like you see the way that I was talking before this comment even came up was, well, we have to offload Ayuk somewhere, right? But if the 49ers are like, well, we gotta we gotta drum something up here. We have to make it seem like we're not desperate to move Ayuk because if we look desperate to move Ayuk, then we're not going to get our best return that we could get. So if it feels like that Matt Barrows is a phenomenal reporter. I don't think he's lying. I don't think he made that up. I just think it could be potentially a you know uh a way to get some leverage going. I don't know. Just a thought. Just a thought. It's just crazy how we got here because at one point I don't think that Brandon Ayuk was considered to be uh ever to be traded. But what happened? I don't know what happened. I can't speak. It's only speculation at this point. Um, but it feels like something went down and they don't feel like they can reconcile. So that's why we're here. Because I believe if it didn't see, that's the thing. If it didn't go down, like if something didn't go down behind the scenes, they should be able to reconcile based on what Brandon Ayuk is going to sign with the Steelers with. Like it's that simple, in my opinion. Um, speculating is that if Brandon Ayuk's cool with the Steelers deal, but everything is cool with the Niners and the Niners really wanted Ayuk back, then what's stopping the Niners and Brandon Ayuk from working out that deal? You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm kind of like, eh, I don't know. I don't know if they really do. And people saying we can't pay him 30. I don't think that's what he's accepting with the Steelers. He would accept less than that. So I don't think the number's 30. I don't think the number's 30 that he's accepting. And that's what I'm saying. if he's already accepted something less than 30, you would think that if the Niners really wanted Ayuk, they would take the deal that the Steelers have presented and said, "All right, accept this. If you want to stay here, accept this deal. If you're willing to accept it from the Steelers, you're willing to accept it from us." So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting situation. Interesting situation. And that's what makes me feel like there's something else. That's what makes me feel like there's something else. So, um, sure, sure, the 49ers want him. Um, but do they want him at his price? And that's the context. It's like, do you want him to play in the fifth year? Is that how you want him? Do you want him at $28 million per year? What what do you wanting him like I could say I want Brandon Aiyuk, but if Brandon Aiyuk is saying, um, I want 28, and the Niners are like, well, I don't want you at 28. I want you, but I don't want you at 28. Do you really want him? That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like from the outside looking in is, I want a Lamborghini, right? Like I would love a I would love a truck. I really want a new truck. I really would love to drop about 100K on a truck. I think that would be fire. But when I go to the dealership and I'm like, what is 20K going to get me? They're going to be like, here's a minivan. But I'm like, but I want a truck. I want that truck. See, it's got the nice wheels on it. It's got the nice suspension package. I want that. Well, your budget says minivan. I hope my analogy is making sense. So, like, I hope my analogy is making sense. As I'm essentially saying is, yeah, they could absolutely say they want him, and that could be true. But do they want him at his price? That's a different conversation. That is a different conversation. So, and again, I did not hear what was said. I just had someone share with me. So, I don't have the proper context, but I'm just making an he said horrible. He said horrible comparison. I get it, I guess. I tried. I tried my best. So Ayuk's value as a wide receiver one is a minivan, but CeeDee Lamb is a Lamborghini. No, I would say Ayuk's value as a wide receiver one is like a McLaren or like you know, I would say it's like a McLaren, maybe like a Lambo, a Ferrari. I would say like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, like they're in that Bugatti territory, they're that Bugatti, they're in that they're in the you know, there's only 50 of these cars made in the world, right? And that's not a dig at Ayuk either. He's very valuable. He's very valuable. He's a very high end car. Very high end car. Um, but what is your budget, right? What is your budget? What does your budget say? Like, I would love a only 10 ever made Bugatti in the world, but I can only afford a Porsche GT3 right now, which isn't a Porsche GT3, by the way, is a beautiful car. So, but that's the analogy I'm trying to make is like if Brandon Aiyuk is a high-end Lamborghini and CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson are currently valued at a okay, I'm gonna listen to my guy right here. I got a mod telling me to chill out, so I'm gonna take his advice. That's why I love my mods. My mods can keep me in check. That's what I want from my mods. If my mods are like, bro, reel it back. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. That's why you got a blue check mark next to your name. They're like, bro, they're like, bro, you're yapping. All right, I'll stop yapping then. I appreciate this. You're a beautiful car, Brad. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, good times. I think we're just tired. I think I'm just tired. I'm absolutely fried, if I'm being honest with you. It's been a long training camp. It's been a good training camp, a long one, a lot going on, especially as of late. Um, so, you know, fun stuff. Fun stuff. But I at least appreciate you guys playing along and also keeping me in check at the same time. What do I think about Ayuk's agent being at the Raiders facility today? Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I don't know if it means anything, but pretty interesting. It's pretty funny. Uh, hey, Jay Dance's moderators call roughing the passer on Brad. Hey, I need it. That's what you guys are there for. Not only are you here for to keep the chat in check, you're here to keep me in check as well. That's why the mod squad's undefeated. So based on how this situation has been going, we will get some kind of substantial report at about 9:30, uh, and we'll get something. We'll get something. Something will drop. Something will happen. So I don't know. Stay tuned. By the posturing that it feels like we're seeing, is it they're posturing over a deal right now. They're posturing over uh they're trying to call each other's bluff. Is that's what it feels like between the Steelers and the 49ers. They're just staring at each other. Spider-Man meme. They're just pointing at each other. So if anything happens, of course, we'll be talking about it, all that kind of stuff. Justin said, was Cowing there today? I think he was, but he didn't seem as involved as yesterday. Today was a weird practice. We didn't even talk about practice, really. I talked about it on my instant reaction. Today was a weird practice. I don't know if it's because of me and like thinking of the Ayuk trade or it was the practice, but it felt weird. Felt weird. Felt weird out there today. Um, typically the energy has been high intensity or low intensity, which is normal. Today's energy felt weird. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, it was kind of a weird practice. Um, can I expand on that? A lot of disjointed plays, not a lot of rhythm. Um, it was just weird. It, again, like I said, like I don't know if it's just we've been so inundated with the Ayuk stuff that it feels more weird, but it's just weird. Like it wasn't like a super smooth practice. It wasn't like, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. It was interesting. Interesting vibes. Did someone send a super chat? Oh, they did. Niners clearly have not shown urgency since they are now trading. Niners haven't said they are desperate. Niners will not send BA for peanuts. Lance was their lesson. I mean, to be honest, the 49ers, I feel like, ended up getting a solid return on Lance, all things considered. Now, they took a bath on the trade that it took to get Lance, but Lance is still the third quarterback with Dallas. Lance cannot beat out Cooper Rush. I have not, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm over here looking for Lance reports or anything, but what I've seen is it's not very positive. So all things considered, you see what what happened with Mac Jones, you see what happened with Justin Fields. All things considered, the Lance 4th round pick actually might turn out okay, considering it doesn't feel like he's doing all that well. Shout out to my guy. Appreciate Justin for becoming a member. I just saw this comment too. First time live. Glad to be here, Brad. Glad to have you joining the channel as an official member. Appreciate you, Justin. That's dope. Gammon said, can you bring on Jason Aponte? Miss it. Yeah, I feel like tomorrow, I got to text him, but I feel like tomorrow will be a good state of the franchise day because no practice now. So kind of be able to get back on a normal schedule in regards to content. So I got to hit him up though. But yeah, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday. We'll see. Hey, but I'll say this. Whenever Jason and I schedule a state of the franchise, more often than not, some news breaks right before we go on. Like it's happened so often, it's become an inside joke that we're like, sometimes we'll be like, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. And then something pops right before we go on. So maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll schedule a show either today or tomorrow, and then something will pop right before we go on. But appreciate everyone tapping in today. Appreciate all of you guys for joining. If you're new to the channel, shoot a sub. I would appreciate it. I would appreciate it if you smash the like button as well. I appreciate everyone's engagement in the chat today. Obviously, some stressful things with the BA thing that's been going on, but hopefully we'll be able to get this figured out here pretty soon. Grab your cookies if you were here. Yeah, if you were here, you deserve a cookie. So grab a cookie on your way out. We appreciate all you guys as always. Anything pops tonight, I'll of course come on. As it stands right now, I'm not coming back on. And then we will determine again if something pops, I'm hopping on. So you know the vibes. So we could see a late night gang stream. We could not. So we'll see. We'll see. I appreciate everyone. Get your cookies on the way out. I gotta go. Peace. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to